This week in Washington, the policy signals are, they're not just inconsistent, they're a sonic boom of confusion.
A sonic boom is a good way to put it. It's just a stunning juxtaposition of, well, boastful rhetoric and complete strategic incoherence.
Right. Just consider the sheer absurdity of what we're looking at today. You have the president publicly, and I mean publicly, declaring, NATO calls me daddy.
Yes. That quote.
And in the same breath, his administration is floating actual plans to structurally dismantle that same 75-year-old alliance.
And that level of contradiction is not just happening on the world stage, it's mirrored perfectly in this domestic political civil war we're seeing.
Exactly. The president's most loyal, most aggressive foot soldier, Marjorie Taylor Greene,
She's gone.
Just walked away. A shocking choice to resign early, abandoning the caucus, and accusing the administration of creating a system of fear. A system that she says put a target directly on her son's back.
And critically, a target fueled by the president's own words, which is just an incredible turn.
And if that wasn't enough, you add to this volatile mix the fact that the U.S. is now conducting lethal military strikes.
In international waters.
Yeah.
Near Venezuela.
Yes. And these operations are justified under this murky legal guise of counter-narcotics, but they're being executed with high-end military assets, F-35s, B-52s.
Which raises all sorts of questions.
Yeah.
And the risk of potential war crimes, especially with these harrowing reports of follow-on double-tap strikes.
It's a truly dizzying level of strategic volatility.
It is, and the thing is, this erraticism has real kinetic consequences. We're seeing regulatory approvals turn into commercial catastrophes for American businesses. Military posturing is creating potential humanitarian crises and governance vacuums abroad.
So for you, our listener, you've provided us with the source material, the transcripts, the policy papers, the analysis. Our job here is to cut through all that noise.
Right. We're going to try and provide a really thorough analysis of these core themes that are defining everything right now. Chaos and contradiction.
We're going to look at what happens when this highly personalized, instantaneous posturing just systematically replaces coherent long-term strategy, both at home and, well, across the globe.
We need to understand not just what is being done, but why this specific style of governance is so inherently destabilizing.
And I think we have to start where the chaos is quite literally consuming its own. The Magier meltdown.
The news of Marjorie Taylor Greene's decision to resign, a full year ahead of schedule.
Yeah.
It just caught Washington completely off guard.
Completely. And this is a really significant moment, isn't it?
It's huge. For half a decade, she wasn't just another supporter. She styled herself as the warrior congresswoman. She was, arguably the president's most ardent and visible defender.
What was her voting record like with him?
It was something like 98% alignment. 98%. So this wasn't some slow drift away from the administration.
No, this was an immediate, public, and just a total rupture of that alliance.
Right, a complete break.
And the significance here isn't just, the political loss for the administration. It's the sheer shock that she would be the one to break ranks.
That's the key. We've seen other fractures, sure, but never from someone so deeply embedded in the AMGA identity itself.
And the way she did it was just extraordinary. She framed her exit not as a political disagreement at all.
No. She framed it as an escape from a relationship that she basically called abusive and full of betrayal.
That framing is so crucial. She publicly stated, and she used language that was clearly designed for maximum impact, that she will be no one's battered wife.
It's a powerful and, frankly, shocking analogy to use in a political context.
She said she would no longer allow the system to abuse her or her family. By using that specific analogy, she's positioning herself as a survivor, right?
Absolutely. A survivor of a toxic political system that demands total, unquestioning submission. She is suggesting that the ultimate cost of that kind of loyalty is...
well, it's self-destruct. Okay, so let's really unpack the policy ruptures that she says led to this crisis point. She accused the administration of fundamentally going establishment.
which is the ultimate betrayal for her base.
Exactly, betraying the core America First movement promises. So where did those fault lines first appear?
Well, she cited several key policy areas, but the one she claimed provoked the most fury from the president was the issue of the Jeffrey Epstein files.
Right, so what was her role in that?
Green took a very public stand. She signed the discharge petition to force the release of those files.
And for our listeners who might not be deep in the weeds of congressional procedure, a discharge petition is a big deal, isn't it?
It's a very big deal. It's a rarely used but incredibly potent tool. If a majority of House members sign it, it basically rips a bill or resolution out of a committee's hands and forces it onto the floor for a direct vote. It completely bypasses the leadership.
So it's a direct act of rebellion against the House establishment.
Precisely. It was both a policy stand, on behalf of victims, and a procedural challenge to the entire power structure.
So what was the president's reaction when she took that step? He couldn't have been happy.
According to Green, he was furious. Just furious. She said she argued back, saying she stood for the women who were, and I'm quoting her here, raped when they were 14 years old, and that those victims deserved the truth.
And what was his response to that?
He allegedly told her that signing the petition was going to hurt people.
Hurt people? That's chillingly vague.
Right. She claims she didn't know who he meant by people, but this event, where she clearly prioritized a moral or populist cause over his specific political request, it seems to have been the starting gun for the public break.
And it wasn't just that one flashpoint. She painted a much broader picture of an administration that had been captured by special interests.
Absolutely. A complete betrayal of the populist anti-elite platform that got him elected in the first place.
So who did she say was pulling the strings?
She expanded her critique to claim the president was now serving the interests of, and this is her list, neocons, big pharma, big tech, military-industrial war complex, foreign leaders, and the elite donor class.
That's basically the entire establishment playbook she's accusing him of running.
It is. She got very specific. She pointed to the crypto bill, noting it passed really quickly, and seemed to serve the interests of big crypto donors.
And she contrasted that with what?
She contrasted it with the failure to address other core conservative grievances, like removing COVID vaccine mandates. She claims that showed deference to big pharma.
I see. So it's about priorities. Crypto donors get their bill, but the base's concerns are ignored.
That was her argument. She also went after his focus on foreign entanglements, suggesting he should park Air Force One and focus purely on domestic issues.
So in her eyes, he's lost his most valuable loyalist because she believes he became the very thing he campaigned against. He became the establishment.
Yes. But here's where the story takes a much darker turn.
This is where it gets really chilling. The policy disagreement escalated almost instantly into a situation where she claims her life and the life of her son were threatened.
And not just threatened, but threatened as a direct result of the president's public name-calling.
Let's walk through that timeline.
It's highly disturbing. After the president publicly called her a traitor, she immediately claims she received two very serious threats. The first was a pipe bomb threat targeting her house.
A pipe bomb threat?
Yes. And the second was multiple direct death threats aimed at her son.
And there was a direct link to his rhetoric, wasn't there?
That's the crucial part. The subject lines of the death threat emails use the president's precise incendiary phrasing, Marjorie Trader Green.
Wow.
So this implies a direct link, a cause and effect, between the executive rhetoric and kinetic violence from extremists.
So she then, understandably contacted the president directly, right? She sent him copies of these threats.
She did. And the response she says she receives was, in her own words, extremely unkind.
Extremely unkind. She wouldn't elaborate on the private conversation.
No, but the president's public dismissal was arguably even more callous. And it's very revealing of the governing pathology here.
What did he say publicly?
When reporters asked him if he was concerned about her life being in danger, he stated, and this is a quote, "Marjorie Trader Green, I don't think her life is in danger. Frankly, I don't think anybody cares about her."
I don't think anybody cares about her. That is just dismissive cruelty on a level that it fundamentally defines the power dynamic at play here.
It does. It suggests that once your loyalty is withdrawn, not only is the protection rescinded, but even the acknowledgement of your existence is immediately rescinded.
And this is the critical systemic implication, right? This moves beyond MTG's personal drama.
Exactly. Her defection serves as an X-ray of the fear that defines the entire Republican caucus. She openly stated that her colleagues are terrified to step out of line.
Terrified of what, specifically?
A nasty Truth Social post from the president. Because that social media censure isn't just words. It can translate directly into death threats, into primary challenges, into a total loss of political capital.
So it creates this governing environment where compliance isn't enforced by policy agreement or party discipline.
No, it's enforced by the constant threat of public shaming and political annihilation.
She talked about seeing colleagues shift from, mocking him privately to kissing his ring publicly.
Yes, she describes that two-faced nature of Washington loyalty perfectly. She claims she witnessed many colleagues who used to make fun of him, making fun of how he talks, and then suddenly, once he won the 2024 primary, everything changed.
What happened then?
Suddenly, they were all, in her words, kissing his ass and decided to put on a MAGA hat for the first time.
That one anecdote just shows the systemic coercion at work. Political survival overrides any kind of authentic belief.
And that fear is what drives the chaos within the Republican leadership structure itself.
So now we see her attempting to carve out a new political identity for herself. She went on CNN, of all places.
Right. And she publicly apologized for her role in toxic politics and is now trying to distinguish herself as America First, separating that brand from the president's personalized mega political operation.
It's a fascinating political move.
It really is. She's trying to keep the populist base, that anti-establishment ideology, while shedding the toxicity and, frankly, the personal risk associated with being in the president's inner circle.
Do you think it's a genuine political evolution or something else?
Well, it's hard to say. It could be a genuine change of heart, or it could be just a tactical retreat to preserve her brand for a future run, a potential gubernatorial or Senate bid down the line.
But regardless of her future plans, this MTG defection confirms that the far-right coalition isn't just fractured.
It's not just fractured. It's actively consuming its own most loyal members. And it's all being driven by this executive erraticism and a non-negotiable demand for absolute total loyalty.
And the high personal cost of that loyalty is just laid bare for every single Republican in Congress to see. This internal chaos is the perfect segue to looking at the strategic incoherence playing out on the global stage.
Okay, so shifting to foreign policy, this theme of contradiction, it escalates exponentially.
It really does.
You have a president who is boasting, NATO calls me daddy, suggesting this ultimate dominance over the alliance.
Right.
While at the exact same time, the formal security documents written by his own administration are aiming to dismantle its foundational structure. Let's start with that NATO dilemma.
The contrast is jarring, and it's why European leaders are so deeply, deeply concerned. The boast. That's purely about personal dominance. It's about a projection of strength. It's a highly personalized view of international relations.
But the policy doesn't match the swagger.
Not even close. The National Security Strategy, which is the document that's supposed to guide actual policy, is dedicated to achieving the dissolution of NATO. It aims to, and this is a quote, end the perception and the reality of NATO as a permanent organization. So the goal isn't to improve the alliance or get members to pay more, it's to end it.
The goal is to restructure it into a transactional mechanism where the U.S. commitment is conditional and, crucially, retractable.
So how exactly has this erratic signaling affected the Europeans on the ground?
Well, it's caused palpable alarm and a significant amount of hedging. The president's rhetoric is consistently hostile toward key allies. He calls European leaders weak. He suggests European nations are decaying.
And he's shown a willingness to endorse these far-right anti-EU figures like Viktor Orban.
Exactly. And all of that signals to Europe that the U.S. is not a reliable partner. In fact, it might be a hostile actor within the alliance structure itself.
So what's the end game for them? What are they doing?
The strategy is seen less as bringing Europe to heel to pay their dues and more as a blueprint for active dissolution. It's forcing capitals like Berlin and Paris to start contingency planning for a world without American security guarantees.
And this volatility, it's nowhere more clearly demonstrated than in the high-stakes world of U.S.-China technology trade.
Oh, absolutely.
The NVIDIA H200 chip announcement, this trading of regulatory permission as commercial reality, is just a textbook example of how this executive volatility turns a potential victory into a financial trap.
This really needs a careful dissection, especially if you're a listener trying to track these complex commercial and national security interests.
So let's start with the precedent, the H20 chip, earlier this year.
Right. So the Trump administration approved the export of the H20 chip to China back in July 2025. Now, this was a degraded chip.
What does that mean exactly?
Degraded.
It means it was specifically designed to fall just below the performance threshold limits set by U.S. export controls. So it was technically compliant with our national security restrictions, but it was still powerful enough to serve the vast Chinese AI market.
And this approval led to a massive market rally, right?
Right.
Wall Street was thrilled.
Exactly. Analysts were projecting revenue opportunities in the tens of billions of dollars. But what happened next demonstrates China's strategic response to this American erraticism.
What did Beijing do? Beijing issued quiet, unofficial guidance to its major domestic tech giants companies like Alibaba, Tencent, ByteDance. It told them to cease purchasing American chips and prioritize alternatives built by their own domestic champions.
So there was no formal trade ban or tariff?
No, nothing official, just political pressure that instantly, and I mean instantly, killed all demand.
So even though the U.S. government gave NVIDIA permission to sell the chip,
The Chinese government quietly rescinded the commercial opportunity to buy it.
and the result for NVIDIA was...
Precisely. Within just a few months, NVIDIA had to halt all H20 production. They were forced to take a staggering $5.5 billion quarterly charge for losses tied to the China export market.
$5.5 billion.
A catastrophic commercial failure, born purely from the geopolitical risk inherent in U.S. policy volatility.
Okay, so now we fast forward to December. The H200 chip, which is roughly twice as powerful as the H20, receives regulatory approval. The market rallies again. Why are analysts warning that this is a category error?
It's a category error because investors are making the exact same mistake twice. They're trading regulatory news as if it's commercial news. The core strategic reality on the ground hasn't budged an inch.
What is that reality?
China has invested over $140 billion since 2014 with one goal in mind: achieving semiconductor independence. Their national goal is reducing reliance on American semiconductors.
And the U.S. government's actions are just reinforcing that.
Completely. The ability to turn the export tap on and off, as we just demonstrated with the H20 fiasco, it just reinforces Beijing's national security imperative to reduce that dependence entirely. Selling them a better chip, the H200, doesn't solve the problem for them.
It just makes the U.S. an indispensable yet utterly unreliable bottleneck.
Perfectly put. And the confusion extends all the way to NVIDIA's own leadership.
Right. The CEO, Jensen Huang, made some interesting comments.
He did. He publicly admitted he had no clue whether China would actually purchase the newly approved H200 chips. He also noted correctly that China won't accept degraded chips.
But wait, they quietly rejected the H20, which was the degraded chip designed to comply with the rules.
Exactly. The logical conclusion here is that Beijing is refusing to accept any American chip that compromises its long-term strategic goal of tech independence, regardless of whether the U.S. gives permission or not. The erratic nature of our export controls has successfully poisoned the entire commercial well.
And this kind of policy improvisation isn't just confined to high-tech geopolitics. We saw it play out in embarrassing detail on the domestic trade front during an agricultural roundtable. It really demonstrated decision-making on the fly.
That event perfectly encapsulated the ad hoc nature of this administration's trade stance. The president was there to announce a $12 billion bailout package for farmers.
And that package was needed largely because of the tariffs his administration had previously imposed on other countries, right?
He was essentially bailing farmers out from the costs of his own policies.
The irony is just staggering.
It is. So then Merrill Kennedy, a rice farmer from Louisiana, brings up the issue of other countries dumping rice into the U.S. market. It's a common complaint about foreign subsidies and price manipulation.
Okay.
The president, however, appeared genuinely confused about who the alleged perpetrators were.
He actually asked her which countries, which not what you'd expect from a president who is supposedly running a major trade investigation.
It showed a complete lack of prepared knowledge on a specific economic grievance he was there to address. When she named India, Thailand, and China, he literally instructed his Treasury Secretary Scott to mark it down.
And then promised to fix it on the spot.
Yes, he promised right there to take care of the problem quickly with very severe tariffs. This is decision-making by improvisation, promising severe policy action based on one comment from one constituent, with no reference to existing trade law or international agreements.
And the irony, as we said, is truly staggering, given the context of the bailout he was there to announce.
It is. He was trying to help farmers recover from his tariffs, yet in the very same session, he floated placing very severe tariffs on fertilizer imported from Canada.
And Canada is our biggest supplier of fertilizer.
The single largest supplier to the U.S. market. If those tariffs were implemented, the cost of farming inputs would skyrocket. directly harming the profitability of the very farmers he was trying to rescue with the bailout.
It's the definition of the contradiction game.
Attempting to solve a problem with one hand while simultaneously creating an identical self-inflicted problem with the other.
Finally, we really have to connect this foreign policy erraticism to the core conflict in Europe, the war in Ukraine. This instability has emboldened our adversaries.
It has created a very dangerous strategic window for Russia. The Czech president, Petr Pavel, publicly voiced the concern that Vladimir Putin is effectively just waiting.
Waiting for what?
Waiting for the U.S. election result, hoping the American commitment will crumble, and Trump will negotiate a deal without any involvement or consultation with the European Union.
And the president's rhetoric does nothing to reassure our allies. He is actively undermining the Ukrainian war effort rhetorically.
He's been relentless in his criticism.
Yeah.
He calls Ukrainian President Zelensky a great salesman. He compares him to P.T. Barnum for successfully securing U.S. funding.
And his analysis of the war itself is also problematic.
It reinforces Moscow's position. He asserts that Russia is in the much stronger negotiating position simply because it is a much bigger country and that Ukraine is losing and has lost territory.
So this messaging, simultaneously praising NATO as his subordinate while actively undermining the most critical defensive war NATO is supporting, it's just pure, profound strategic instability.
That kind of rhetoric, whether it's aimed at NATO or Ukraine, just suggests that the U.S. foreign policy compass is spinning wildly. We're moving away from consistent strategy and towards these highly personalized, unpredictable transactions. This volatile approach, it moves from trade and alliances into a much, much more dangerous realm when we look at the Caribbean.
Right. The U.S. military has deployed a major force. We're talking amphibious ships, destroyers, B-52s, F-35s, all near Venezuela.
And the strategic intent is just shrouded in ambiguity. Is the goal simple counter-narcotics? Or is it military coercion intended for regime change against Nicolas Maduro?
Well, the scale and composition of the deployment really suggests the latter. I mean, we are talking about 8,000 U.S. sailors and Marines.
It's a significant force.
And as the FIU policy position paper points out, this force is entirely not consistent with contemporary state-of-the-art U.S. tools used for counter-narcotics.
No. Those operations typically rely on smaller, highly specialized intelligence and Coast Guard patrols. This is something else.
It's the definition of a mixed contradictory signal, isn't it?
It is. It's too small and too exposed for a full, costly military invasion, which would violate the America First aversion to nation building.
But
yet, it is large enough to project menace, as analysts have said. The most plausible strategic analysis is that this force is deployed for calibrated psychological pressure.
to do what?
To rattle Venezuela's leadership and military command, and perhaps encourage a coup or some elite defections.
But the most immediate and harrowing result of this strategic ambiguity has been the use of kinetic lethal force.
We've gone from maritime surveillance to outright military strikes.
Yes. Since September, the U.S. military has conducted 21 lethal strikes against vessels in international waters near the Eastern Pacific and Venezuela.
And the death toll is reportedly over 80 people.
And the president directly links these vessels to narco-terrorists and the Maduro regime, which immediately raises a profound legal and ethical question.
Under what legal authority is the U.S. using lethal military force in international waters against alleged drug traffickers?
And that's where the legal complexity, or maybe the legal ambiguity, becomes so critical. The administration designated the Cartel de los Soles,
Which they claim is linked to Maduro.
as a foreign terrorist organization, an FTO, and they assert this designation enables new options for military action.
But that's a legally tenuous stretch, to put it mildly. The FTO designation, which is generally used under Title 22 of the U.S. Code, primarily deals with financial sanctions and immigration restrictions. It's not a green light for military action.
So critics and reportedly even some U.S. government lawyers are pushing back on this.
They are. They argue that U.S. law does not explicitly authorize military action, simply because a group is labeled an FTO. The administration reportedly informed Congress that U.S. forces are in a non-international armed conflict with these drug cartels.
That's a legal justification typically reserved for groups like Al-Qaeda or ISIS.
Exactly, not transnational criminal organizations.
So framing a conflict against drug cartels under the laws of armed conflict like an AUMF, an authorization for use of military force. That's a massive shift in military legal doctrine.
It is, and it fundamentally risks blurring the lines between law enforcement and military action.
And that blurring leads directly to the most horrific accusations of the entire operation, the reports of war crimes.
The reports involving a double tap strike.
Can you explain what that is?
The reports allege the deliberate follow-on killing of strike survivors. Specifically, a second strike to kill the two men after they were injured after the first strike on September 2nd.
This action, if it's confirmed, it constitutes a war crime, deliberately targeting non-combatants or survivors.
And the international fallout was immediate. The Colombian president, Gustavo Petro, publicly accused the U.S. of murder after a Colombian fisherman reportedly died in one of the strikes.
And the executive response to these reports just demonstrates the administrative chaos we've been talking about.
It really does. The president initially promised total transparency, stating he would certainly release the drone footage.
But then what happened?
Days later, he completely reversed course. He flatly denied he ever made the promise, even scolding a reporter for suggesting it.
And then he delegated the decision.
He did. He ultimately delegated all responsibility, saying that Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth would decide, and quote, "Whatever he decides is okay with me."
This shift from promised transparency to outright denial and then delegation, it's a classic display of erratic executive behavior aimed at minimizing political liability.
And we know the issue is serious because lawmakers who were briefed on that September 2nd double tap footage were reportedly appalled and deeply disturbed by the actions they witnessed.
The legal and moral fallout is already substantial, but we have to look at the strategic risk of this entire approach. Drawing from that FIU policy position paper again, why is this military coercion likely to backfire against the Maduro regime?
The strategy is fundamentally flawed because it misunderstands the very nature of the regime it's targeting.
How so?
The goal is to encourage elite defections. The assumption is that if we pressure the regime enough, military and civilian elites will calculate the risk and abandon Maduro.
But that's not how the Maduro regime works.
No. The regime's resilience is not ideological, it's transactional. Senior military officers, intelligence heads, civilian officials, they're all deeply enmeshed in highly profitable criminal networks.
They share enrichment from illicit activities, which binds them together.
It creates a pact of mutual protection and collective survival. We are talking about gold smuggling mechanisms, control of illicit oil routes, narcotics trafficking. It's a criminal enterprise.
So external military pressure, especially aggression and lethal strikes,
is far more likely to reinforce cohesion among these elites. When they're faced with an existential threat, they close ranks to defend their shared enterprise. They don't fracture and defect. The coercion achieves the exact opposite of its intended goal.
So even tactically successful strikes could fail strategically and risk creating a far worse scenario.
That's the critical conclusion. Even if surgical strikes manage to damage a few vessels, they won't alter the regime's structural power, which relies on its control over revenue and its coercive institutions.
And what's the worst case scenario?
Worse, escalation risks creating a profound governance vacuum, an unstable power void. And given that nearly 7 million Venezuelans are already displaced, a governance vacuum would accelerate migration flows and empower regional criminal groups far beyond the current Cartel de los Soles. It would destabilize the entire region.
So the recommended strategy, according to the analysts, demands a fundamental realignment of tools and goals.
The military coercion strategy is completely misaligned. Analysts recommend enhanced Coast Guard patrols, which are the correct tool for interdiction. They recommend robust multilateral law enforcement cooperation with regional partners.
And what about sanctions?
Sharpening sanctions enforcement against the specific illicit gold and oil revenue streams. These tools target the transactional nature of the regime's power structure far more effectively than amphibious assault ships and B-52s.
So as the paper concludes,
deploying a highly visible, mixed-signal military force without a coherent strategic objective is nothing more than a performance of resolve in the absence of direction.
A performance of resolve. That phrase seems to encapsulate the strategic volatility we've seen across every single segment today, doesn't it? From the MAGGA civil war to the trade traps and the legally dubious strikes.
And the final, and I think perhaps the most disturbing layer of this governing chaos, is found in the president's own rhetoric.
It's not just policy.
No. This involves not only these baffling comments that are completely divorced from reality, but also the strategic use of offensive, inflammatory language targeting political opponents and entire communities.
we have to start with the perfect analogy for the policy disconnect. The IQ 185 lawnmower.
It's a comment that it hangs in the air, divorced from all reality.
It's genuinely astonishing. During the very same agricultural roundtable where he was discussing tariffs and bailouts, he pivoted to complain about government regulations on farming equipment.
And his claim was that modern farming equipment, specifically citing lawnmowers, has become so technically complex that you now need about 185 IQ to turn on a lawnmower now.
I have to admit, I sometimes struggle with the programming on my smart thermostat, but 185 IQ, that is firmly in the genius category.
It puts the barrier of entry for using a common lawnmower higher than applying for most advanced physics programs. It's just absurd.
And it's a complete disconnect from the daily practical realities of the American consumer and workforce.
It's a pattern, though, a pattern of elite detachment. It follows his previous comments about groceries being an old-fashioned word. It suggests an almost willful ignorance of basic economic realities or consumer experience.
So what's the function of a comment like that?
It functions as a form of populist grievance invention. You create an enemy over regulation complexity that then justifies your anti-regulatory stance, no matter how absurd the premise is.
Okay, so moving from the absurd to the outright offensive, the rhetoric aimed at specific political opponents has become highly inflammatory. It's abandoned all pretense of basic public discourse standards.
And the most prominent recent example is the highly offensive language used publicly against the governor of Minnesota, Tim Walz.
What do you say?
The president publicly called Governor Walz retarded and incompetent. And he linked that insult directly to the governor's policies regarding the Somali community in Minnesota.
And when he was asked directly by a reporter whether he stands by that highly offensive and derogatory claim, he didn't retract it.
No, he doubled down.
What was his reply?
He replied, "Yeah, I think there's something wrong with him. Absolutely, sure." He reinforced the idea that anyone who allowed those people, referring to Somalis, into a state and paid billions of dollars to Somalia has something wrong with them.
This is strategic dehumanization.
It is. You use the most offensive language possible to delegitimize a political opponent while simultaneously linking that attack to a core immigration policy grievance.
Yeah, and this rhetoric leads directly to the president's highly aggressive policy goals aimed at citizenship itself, the public push for denaturalization.
This represents a massive threat to the constitutional status of naturalized Americans. The president stated his intention to revoke the citizenship of people that are in here that shouldn't be here.
And he specifically named Somalis and others from countries that are out of control themselves.
Yes.
And when he was pressed on whether he meant revoking the citizenship of people who went through the legal process to become Americans, he was explicit about his goal.
He was. He stated, "If I have the power to do it, I'm not sure that I do, but if I do, I would denaturalize, absolutely."
But the power to strip citizenship from naturalized Americans is extremely limited, isn't it?
It's extremely limited under the 14th Amendment and established Supreme Court precedent. It requires proof of fraud in the acquisition process. Yet, the president is proposing to apply this power broadly based on political criteria like country of origin or perceived disloyalty.
And he didn't just target a policy, he tied this directly to a sitting congressperson, demonstrating how personalized and targeted this policy threat really is.
He used a specific, unfounded personal attack against a congressperson from Somalia, claiming she supposedly came into our country by marrying her brother.
And then asserted that she should be.
Thrown her the hell out of our country and stripped of her seat.
Right.
The explicit goal is clear, he said. "I want to get them out. We got a lot of people in our country that shouldn't be here."
It's just an unprecedented level of political volatility. You're combining personal insults, offensive language, and a threat to revoke the constitutional rights of naturalized Americans, all based on executive fiat.
Whether it's inventing the IQ 185 lawnmower, using derogatory slurs against governors, or threatening the constitutional status of entire communities, the pattern remains consistent.
Political governance is driven by immediate, often highly inflammatory, personalized, and contradictory impulses, rather than institutional process or any kind of measured analysis.
The cumulative effect is an atmosphere where volatility isn't a bug in the system, it's a feature. It's designed to maintain control through constant disruption and fear. So to synthesize this overwhelming volume of source material we've covered, we've tracked strategic incoherence and contradiction across every single major policy front this week.
We have. The domestic political chaos saw Marjorie Taylor Greene's dramatic defection, an exit that was clearly driven by systemic fear and political retribution.
And internationally, we saw these massive contradictions.
From the NVIDIA chip approval, creating an immediate commercial trap because Beijing is hedging against America's unpredictable export controls.
To the president boasting about NATO, while his own strategy literally targets its dissolution.
And who can forget the ad hoc policy formulation promising very severe tariffs based on a single conversation with a rice farmer, moments after announcing a bailout for that very same sector.
And this chaos reached a truly dangerous apex in the Caribbean, where a substantial military deployment aimed at regime coercion risks backfiring, hardening the Maduro regime's transactional structure and fueling regional instability.
All under the legally dubious guise of counter-narcotics, complete with those harrowing accusations of double-tap strikes that deeply disturb lawmakers.
This environment of constant contradiction, it demands a specialized filter from you, the informed listener.
You have to constantly distinguish between the regulatory news and the commercial reality, between the performance of military resolve and the achievable strategic objective.
And critically, between the rhetoric of loyalty and the systemic reality of fear.
The risk is found in that gap, right? The gap between what is said and what is strategically possible.
When the leader of the free world says one day that Russia is in the stronger negotiating position because it is a bigger country, while simultaneously demanding total loyalty from allies and opponents alike, the fundamental concept of consistency is just. It's destroyed.
And that leads us to the final provocative thought to consider. The most profound long-term cost of relying on Oval Office erraticism as a governing strategy, whether it's aimed at foreign allies, domestic opponents, or authoritarian regimes, is that it eventually signals one fundamental destabilizing truth to everyone watching.
The United States is an unreliable partner.
So what happens when global predictability, which has been a core pillar of post-war stability, is fundamentally shattered, and both our allies and our enemies realize they can no longer trust or predict American policy? That is the chaotic legacy we are attempting to navigate today.